This video will discuss Chapter 8.8, Writing Linear Equations. In this chapter, we're going to introduce a new form of an equation called point-slope. But before we do, let's make sure we understand slope-intercept. So remember, slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. And so if I wanted to write in this line, which has a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of -5, into slope-intercept form, I would need to write y equals, I'm going to substitute this in for m, so that's 1/2 x, and then I'm going to go plus b. Now keep in mind that b is negative, so it's plus -5, which is the same as -5. Right? So that would be this in slope-intercept. Now I want to introduce to you this new form, which is called point-slope. Okay, and so the idea is that point-slope, like slope-intercept, where you could look at an equation and see both the slope and the y-intercept, in this form, you can actually see a point on the line as well as the slope. Okay, and so your slope is obviously m, right? That's my slope. And the point that you're going to see is x1, y1. So x1, comma, y1 is the point on the graph, or the point on the line. Okay, now just be careful because these are negatives, right? Or I'm sorry, these are subtractions. So if you get something where y1 were negative, minus negative would actually turn that to a positive. So this is supposed to be y minus this value is the slope times x minus this value. Okay, we're going to work with this for a little while, so give me a second. But before we do, I want to show you exactly where this comes from, because I think a lot of people feel like this is just some magical formula. And so the idea, and you will not necessarily be responsible for knowing this on a quiz, but I think it's a good idea for you to understand where it comes from. This is the formula for slope, hopefully one you're getting somewhat comfortable with. The slope of a line is equal to y2 minus y1 times x2 minus x1. And so, if I were to get rid of a fraction, I can multiply both sides by the denominator. So I'm going to multiply both sides by x2 minus x1, right? And I'm going to multiply x2 minus x1 to this side. So pretend that that is down there. I didn't really leave myself a lot of space. This will cancel itself out. So I'm left with m times x2 minus x1 equals y2 minus y1. Okay, now I'm just going to use the property that allows me to flip sides. So instead of being m times x2 minus x1 equals y2 minus y1, I'm going to write this as y2 minus y1 equals m times x2 minus x1. Right, I'm simply just writing it. I just basically took this, put it on the left side, took this, and put it on the right side. I didn't really do anything other than that. And the only thing that's going to be different between this and the formula that we're talking about is I'm just going to erase that, and I'm going to erase that, and you now have point-slope form. All right, so just keep in mind that this is not some kind of magical formula that came out of nowhere. Okay, and so your point is this x1, y1, and the x and the y are just any point, any other point along the line. So the question is, how would we use this? Let's take a look at a problem like this. Find the equation of the line that passes through 4,8 and -2,5. So first thing I need to do, before I can find any of the two equations, I need to know the slope. So I can go x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, and then we just talked about the formula for slope. The formula for slope is y2 minus y1. So that would be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, and as I reduce this, or as I simplify this, this becomes -3 over -6. And -3 over -6 is the same as +1/2. So I now know the slope of the line. My problem is, if I want to use the y equals mx plus b, I'll come back to that slide in a sec, I would have to know what b is. But I don't know what the y-intercept is. So my problem is that that form is not ideal for a situation like this one, because I would have to do a lot of work to find out what the y-intercept is. So instead, I will take the slope, which I now know is 1/2, and I will take one of the points on the line, which I'll use this one. Though keep in mind, you could use this one, but for many of you, it's easier to kind of keep the x1, y1 as the x1 and y1. And so this is going to be, now I'm going to use this formula, or I'm sorry, this equation, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So I'm going to go y minus y1, which is 8, equals m, which we figured out was 1/2, times x minus x1, which is 4. Now, the problem is a lot of people don't realize, but you're done there. Right? People start distributing, which you can do, and if you were to start distributing and then start simplifying, you could actually get it to y equals mx plus b. However, if I want to leave it in point-slope form, I can just leave it like this. And the advantage of this form is even if you didn't know anything that's up here on the top, so I'm looking at just this circled part, I can tell you from this, right, now I'll come back in a sec, from there I should be able to tell you the slope of the line as well as x1 and y1. So I could tell you that on this equation, the slope of the line is 1/2, and the point is 4, 8. Right? Because this is x1, y1, and then that's my slope. So I should be able to, and as you can see, obviously I know that that's one of the points, and I know that's the slope from information I've done before, but just by looking at this and using point slope, and that's the advantage of point slope, is I can now find the slope and a point on the line. Okay, two things to be really cautious about with point slope form is that because it goes x1 comma y1, remember your formula has y1 listed first, so make sure that you're not taking the x and substituting it in here, because that'll create a problem for you. Right? And then the second thing is if you were to use a negative, it would change things. So had I used this point instead, which you are allowed to do, it would be y, well, that's not working. It would be y minus, and I'm going to use this point, 5, and even though that's y2, it's okay, equals, same slope, 1/2 times x minus -2. And so when you go x minus -2, right, this ends up becoming plus. So it'll be y minus 5 equals 1/2 times x plus 2. Now this equation is actually just as correct as this one, because you can use either point. Okay? However, many people like to stick with this because they already have x1, y1 listed here. But keep in mind, had I written the problem differently and put this point first and this point second, you would have found the exact same slope. Wow, throwing things. You would have found the exact same slope, even if this point was first and this point was second. Okay, you still would have gotten 1/2, and then you would have been calling this one, I guess it would have been this one in this position, x1 and y1, and so then you would have this as your equation and not this. So just remember that it doesn't necessarily matter which order you put them in. Okay, make sure that you have this equation written down somewhere because you are going to want to use this in class. All right, that's all I got for you in writing linear equations. Thanks very much for watching the video. Don't forget to do the problems at the bottom of the page. I'll see you in class.